What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Trainer Club. Today we are going to check out my top 5 best battle parties for Pokemon PvP. So let's check this out. Welcome to the Trainer Club, guys. Here we go! Alright guys, so before I get started on this battle party, I want to know, what is your top 3 pick for your battle party for your Pokemon? I'm very curious. Drop it down 1, 2, 3 in the comments right now. I am in New Jersey this week with my beautiful cousin Samantha. She is the photographer right now, so thank you for helping me out, Samantha. So today we're gonna look at our top battle parties, my top 5 for PvP coming to Pokemon Go. The reason why is because they cover up a lot of their weaknesses, so they are the most thorough battle parties. So let's say you have that Moltres in there and they throw in some type of water, you can then counter it with some grass. So that's really what we're looking at when we're talking about this video. We're not talking about the single most powerful DPS, although these guys are some of the most powerful DPS guys for their class, but it's also because of how well-rounded they are. A lot of things are going to be figured out once we get into the PvP, but for right now we're going to start predicting what some of the best battle parties are going to be, and I am going to bring that courtesy of Matt Fitz, Smyrna, Georgia, so make sure to check him out. The number 1 battle party is going to be Mewtwo, Tyranitar, and Machamp, and I know you guys are saying that's pretty common. Tell us something new, but I'm going to tell you why those are very effective Pokemon to be in your top 3 spots. Here we go, guys, jumping right in with the Mewtwo, Tyranitar, and Machamp parties. So the reason we're doing these parties, and I just wanted to make sure that we're super clear on this, is because of how they counteract each other's weaknesses, making their team strong. So Matt Fitz did a great job looking at these different Pokemon, how powerful they can be, and how they are going to really help each other out. So if we check out right here, we're going to look at Mewtwo, and obviously the hype around Mewtwo is real. He's got a max CP with the new balance of 4178, so he's above 4,000 at 100% IV, and his weaknesses are going to be Ghost, Dark, and Bug, right? So typically we would have Tyranitar as a pretty solid Mewtwo counter, with a lot of people are going to be using that. And then this is why we are going to check this out later in the video, and why Machamp is part of the party, right? Because we're balancing out each other's usually strong weaknesses. So he's going to resist Fighting and Psychic. So this is why we will check that out later. And then he's going to have a total Weave DPS, which means that he's going to be producing a ton of damage at 2391, and a lot of these top 3 in this first 3-round party are going to be in a very high DPS, and most of these Pokemon that we are looking at are going to be high DPS, because not only do we want to deliver high DPS, we want to have our weaknesses covered either through some of their movesets or some of the other Pokemon in the top 3 party, and to be able to make sure that we have a well-rounded, efficient party when we are fighting against people. The Mewtwo, as we're looking at here, I want to drop these graphics in here for you guys. At a level 15 with a minimum IV, he still cannot qualify for the Great League. He can qualify for the Ultra League, so if you're able to get him, or you still have him at level 20, because he's not available in the raids right now, you can go ahead and use him for the Ultra League, and this party can definitely be viable for your Ultra League if you have these guys all set up for this. We're going to look at his top movesets, with the top DPS producing moveset of Confusion Psychic. So if you want to stay stab effective, you can use Confusion Psychic. However, a lot of us are going to be using the Confusion Shadow Ball. 1, because Shadow Ball is legacy, but 2, Shadow Ball is also going to counter if you have a Ghost Pokemon out there. It's going to be effective against that Ghost Pokemon. So if somebody has a Gengar, that Shadow Ball is going to counteract the Gengar out there, and that delivers a total Weave DPS of 22. So one Mewtwo may be Confusion Psychic with Confusion Shadow Ball. The second one, you could also do Confusion Shadow Ball and Confusion Hyper Beam, depending on what the purpose of your Mewtwo in your party is and where he is going to fit into what he is counteracting. But for this one, I would say with the Shadow Ball, to also unlock that Psychic moveset, to make sure that you are sitting at a pretty protected place and you're able to use that stab effectiveness if somebody busts out a Machamp if you need to, and then you're also able to use that Shadow Ball. So that looks like what it's going to be the best option for you to use right now. And then the other options that we can have is the Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, and Ice Beam. So if you're going to want to use those guys, you can also use Mewtwo for those because they're pretty effective. I've done a Flamethrower comparison with the Entei and the Mewtwo, and it's very similar at the top of the pack. So, I mean, really what it comes down to is, are you using Mewtwo as a multi-dimensional character, which he can be because of all these movesets he gets, because he could be a really good Dragon Slayer as well with that Ice Beam, although he's not getting the stab effectiveness, but his diversability is extremely awesome and apparent here. The top counters is going to be Deoxys in the attack form. We're going to do Darkrai, Mewtwo as himself with that Ghost move, which is going to be effective against the Psychic. And then we're also going to look at the Weavile, which is Dark, and then we're going to look at the Lick, Ghost, Shadow Ball, Ghost, Gengar, and then we're also going to look at the Tyranitar, which is the Bite Crunch. So this Bite Crunch T-Tar, which is sitting in that third counter effectiveness, which a lot of people could possibly be using, will be countered out by one of our other Pokemon. We are now going to check out the number 2 Pokemon, which is going to be Tyranitar. And Tyranitar sits in at a new max CP of 3834. So he's a very effective Pokemon. Look at his stats, pretty well balanced. He does show a lot of weaknesses out here, right? We see the fighting, the water, the steel, the ground, the grass, the fairy, the bug, right? And so people are wondering, dude, why are you going to put Tyranitar in there? Just because of how powerful he is right now and of the party that we have lined up in here, because he's going to show power against or resistance to Psychic, Dark, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Normal, and Poison. So with this Tyranitar, we are expecting a lot of people to be throwing Mewtwo's in there, which we're going to have this Tyranitar in there to counteract that. And then the Machamp is going to counteract the Tyranitar. So this is what it's going to look like, and we actually can get it in the Great League because we can actually catch the Larvatars at lower CPs and lower levels. So even at level 15 minimum IV, which would be like a 0%, you're getting it at 1450. So if you had 100%, that was like a level 10, and you evolved it and you haven't powered it up based on my other videos, you're sitting pretty, because you can put a T-Tar in the Great League, the Ultra League, or the Master League. Smackdown is going to be a legacy fast move. If we're using Smackdown as our legacy move set, we can also use the Crunch move and the Stone Edge as the charge attacks with the 2 charge attacks. Why we're going to do this is just because, like I said before, we can use a multi-purpose 2-move guy. We're both getting Stab on both of the move sets. We're getting Crunch, which is the Dark move set, and then we're going to get Stone Edge, which is also the Rock, getting that damage. And the Weave DPS on the Smackdown Stone Edge is going to be 20.60, and then the Smackdown and Crunch, we're doing 1973. And then we're looking at his top counters, which number 1 we know is Machamp, and that is precisely why we have the Mewtwo in the party, because the Mewtwo is going to be strong against the fighting, right? So this is how we're looking at these parties and how well balanced we're looking at making these parties. The Machamp, coming in at a max CP of 3056, is a pretty solid attacker, and he's got a decent amount of stamina as well, and he shows weaknesses to Psychic, Flying, and Fairy, and he resists Bug, Dark, and Rock, so he's going to be strong against those guys. And then the other good thing about having Machamp in here is he's going to be pretty solid against normal Pokemon. So if people are putting in like Blissies and Snorlaxes, you're going to have a little bit of an upper hand here, because Machamp is going to be able to do damage to these Pokemon when a lot of other Pokemon are pretty neutral. The most highest Weave DPS is going to be Karate Chop and Dynamic Punch. So Karate Chop, Dynamic Punch, but Karate Chop is a legacy move. So what we're looking at here is going to be Counter and Dynamic Punch as the number 1. You could also use that Machamp and have a Heavy Slam. Although it's not a stab move set, with that Heavy Slam, you're going to cover the Fairy weakness, because Steel is going to be strong against Fairy. So although Machamp will take a lot of damage from a Fairy like a Gardevoir, it's going to cover that weakness. So taking that Heavy Slam into account may be one of the things that you want to do. So if we check out his move sets here, Bullet Punch and Counter are the first ones, and then we're going to go Close Combat. In my opinion, I would select Heavy Slam, because we already have a fighting move. We don't need 2 fighting moves. Because the Dynamic Punch is going to do a little bit more damage, we're actually going to look at the Heavy Slam Dynamic Punch is going to be what I would recommend, because then you're going to at least be able to do damage to the fairies even though it's not stab effective. That is why we're sitting here and why we have top counters Mewtwo, Azelf, Alakazam, Espeon, Rayquaza, Moltres, but then we also have some fairies that we could be very effective against as well.